Hello, everybody. As you're starting to log in, you are in the right place. This is the New York State CDFI Coalition Ssbci update, and we're happy to have you here. It's 11:59 by my clock, so we're going to talk amongst ourselves for a minute, grab a beverage, make yourself comfy, and we'll get started as more people log in. But you're all being very prompt today. That's good. I'm seeing lots of attendees already. So you're not confused, this is a webinar, not a meeting, so we won't be able to see everyone, just the presenters. We had such a great uptake on this program that we've got upwards of 50 people signed up, so that gets very distracting if you have a lot of tiny little postage stamp size screens during a webinar like this. So we've opted for the webinar. We're just going to see the screens of the presenters. However, if you have questions before, during, or after the presentations, we have a couple of ways that you can get them to me. You can use the Q&A function in Zoom, which is one option, or you can use the chat feature in Zoom, which is another option. And we'll get the questions to the presenters. What we're going to do is let the presenters go through their PowerPoints. And once they wrap up, please hold your questions till the end and we can ask questions at that point. So it's 12 o'clock now. We're going to hang out here for a couple of minutes longer as people continue to log in. Thank you for joining us. This is the New York State CDFI Coalition's Ssbci update, courtesy of Empire State Development. We're really grateful to have them here. And we'll just hang out for a minute or so longer as people continue to log in. I hope everyone is preparing for the storm this weekend. Looks like we're going to have a little bit of a spring snowstorm, at least in some parts of New York, which is either exciting or horrifying, depending upon how you look at it. My grandmother always called spring snowstorms poor man's fertilizer. And apparently there's something to it. I always thought it was just an old wives' tale or a farmer's almanac type of saying, but apparently snow, when it falls, pulls certain elements out of the atmosphere. And when it lands on the farm fields, it provides elemental nutrients to the soil. Who knew? That's your nugget of wisdom that has nothing to do with CDFIs today, for I'm a font of useless knowledge. So it's 12:01. We're going to give this one more minute. You are at the New York State CDFI Coalition's Ssbci update, and we'll get started in just about 30 seconds. We have people continuing to log in. Happy to see you all here. This is a webinar, not a meeting, so we won't have other people talking other than the presenters. But if you do have questions, you can put them in the Q&A function in Zoom or enter them into the chat, and we'll present them to the panelists after they do their presentations. So it is 12:02. We have probably about half the people who signed up for the program already signed in, so let's go ahead and get started. I am Colleen Ryan. I'm the Consulting Executive Director for the New York State CDFI Coalition, and we are very glad that you could join our special briefing on Ssbci today. Most of the people on the call are CDFI executives, but we do have a few special guests. So here's an elevator soundbite of what New York State Community Development Financial Institutions, or CDFIs, do. We provide financial services and education for low-income New Yorkers. We leverage federal and private dollars for economic development. We create market-based solutions that provide capital to chronically underserved communities across the state. And we promote responsible alternatives to predatory loans. Since 1995, the New York State CDFI Coalition has been the organizer and catalyst for strategic initiatives that help CDFIs and the communities they serve. The coalition provides a collective voice, allowing our members to stay locally focused while delivering impact associated with increased scale. So I hope that if you're not already a member, you will join the coalition so that we can provide this important service to the field. So speaking of service to the field, I do hope that the CDFIs on this call are planning to join us next week for our bi-monthly all hands Zoom. We'll have an update on the New York Small Business Truth in Lending Act and its companion at the federal level, HR 6054, which is the Small Business Disclosure Act of, or the Small Business Lending Disclosure Act of 2021, sponsored by New York's own Representative Nydia Velazquez. These measures require transparency in small business lending to help entrepreneurs across the state who may otherwise fall prey to predatory lenders. They call for disclosure of annual percentage rate, or APR, total fees, payment amounts, and prepayment policies that will help business owners make better informed financial decisions. So CDFIs, please watch your inbox for more information about Congresswoman Velasquez's bill and our all hands Zoom next week. So today we are pleased to welcome our colleagues from Empire State Development to make some important updates on the contractor financing program and the capital project loan fund. Ray from Empire State Development has also connected me with Matt Watson, his colleague at ESD, who will be joining us in the coming months to talk about New York's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, or MEP, as well as its hotspot and incubator programs, which should be very interesting for our New York State CDFIs who work with New York makers. So Ray is unable to join us today, but we are very happy to welcome Matthew Kennedy from his team, who will start with the first presentation. So Matt, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Let me share my screen here, my PowerPoint presentation. Give me just a second. Hopefully that's coming up on everyone's screen.
Absolutely.
It looks like, okay. Thank you. So my name is Matthew Kennedy. I'm from Empire State Development's Division for Small Business and Technology Development. I'm actually a part of the Access to Capital team. I'm based out of the office in downtown Albany. So I am upstate, waiting for the snowstorm too. And today I'm going to be talking about the Ssbci Contractor Financing Program, which is one of our new Ssbci funded programs that actually in many ways mimics an older program, but expands it to additional businesses that weren't previously eligible for it. So this is very similar to an old program that we had called Bridge to Success. If you are familiar at all with that term or that name, this is the new replacement for that program. That program will be sunsetting, and this will be replacing it. So there we go. So the contractor financing program is going to provide a $22 million loan loss reserve to incentivize lending intermediaries to create access to capital support to New York State contractors. So these loans are specifically to help contractors successfully execute contracts and ease timing of payments on government-funded contracts. So these are for government-related contracts. And these loans should be open to small businesses, socially economically disadvantaged individual business owners, which are SETI businesses. I'll talk about that in just a moment to give you the SETI definition, and businesses in distress census tracts, and of course MWBEs. These participating lenders can use this money as a loan loss reserve to issue government-related contract loans. So they are lines of credit that are related to government-related projects, and manage lines of credits that they would not usually underwrite. So again, this is specifically, I want to point out, this is specifically for government-related contracts. So it would need to be a contract that was related to a city government, state government, a school district, a town, a county, any sort of government-related funding going into a project. And I do want to point out, to make sure it's absolutely clear, that the contractor can be a prime contractor or a subcontractor on that particular contract. So if they are subcontracting for a prime contractor that has a contract with the state of New York or the contract with the county, they can qualify. That loan does qualify as a subcontractor on that project. And loans can be used for contract deployment, advances against inventory, construction costs, purchase orders, managing payables and receivables, contract finance costs, general working capital. So they are working capital loans intended to help to smooth the process and make sure that these small businesses can complete these contracts on time and profitably. So before I go too far, I do want to talk about, you heard me say the phrase SETI business, and this was mentioned last week as well. And there's a special definition for a SETI business, a socially and economically disadvantaged individual owned business, that is part of all of these programs of Ssbci, and I want to cover it because it is important. It is a little bit different than what might be traditionally considered as economically disadvantaged business. So it is specifically a business whose membership of a group that has been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias in American society. Can be based upon gender, can be based upon veteran status, limited English proficiency, physical handicaps. That was a question last week. Physical handicap is one of the SETI business. Someone's physically handicapped. Long-term residence in an environment isolated from mainstream American society. Federally or state recognized Native American tribes. Long-term residence in rural community is considered a SETI business. Residents in the New York U.S. territory, of course, that's not going to help us for New York because no one's going to be living in Guam as a New York business, but residents in a community undergoing economic transitions, which includes communities impacted by the shift towards a net zero economy or deindustrialization. Of course, that's most of upstate New York, right? And membership of any other underserved community. So this is the definition when the phrase SETI is used. This program is not limited to SETI businesses, but it is important. It's one of the primary targets of the business is SETI businesses, and it's going to be part of the reporting structure when you do report whether you're doing a loan if the business is a SETI-based business. Excuse me. So now some general program terms. Program lenders should generally target contractors with revenues of up to $5 million with fewer than 100 employees. So again, we are looking for small businesses, revenues up to $5 million. Loans can be provided by CDFIs, MDIs, community banks, credit unions, and other community lending institutions. So this is not strictly for CDFIs. CDFIs, of course, can participate. There are going to be some credit unions that are going to be part of the program. And I'm sure that there may be some traditional lenders that might choose to be part of the program too, although I think it's primarily going to be CDFIs and credit unions. And these institutions would typically be offering lending amounts up to $500,000 on these types of loans. So historically, with Bridge to Success, a lot of times these loans were smaller than $500,000. In fact, there was a cap of $200,000 on the old program. But with this new program, with the expanded guidelines, we've increased that a maximum amount that can be covered to $500,000. The duration of the loan is based entirely upon the borrower's contract to be completed. They're generally not going to be longer than 18 months. They can be. It is up to the lender to use their discretion to determine the length of the term of the loan. It could be a 3-month loan, could be a 24-month loan, could even be a 36-month loan, I suppose, if depending on how long the contract was that was part of the process. Participating lenders, again, are going to offer these loans through lines of credit or managed lines of credit and underwrite each loan depending on the credit risk of the contractors to determine the terms and applicable fees. So we do suggest, we strongly really would like these to be lines of credit because it helps reduce the risk to the borrower or to the lender and to the program, of course. Rather than have a large lump sum of money that goes out at the beginning of a project that, immediately if something happens and the project doesn't get completed, it can be a large burden to the organization giving that loan. Lenders may acquire or may require the assignment of contracts, receivables, or other collateral or guarantees from the borrower if they choose to. You can do an assignment of contracts. We'll talk about that in a moment. You can collect other collateral if necessary. That is up to you. That is based upon your underwriting process. In general, interest rates should not exceed the prime rate plus 5%, and fees should not exceed those charged for similar non-program loans. So we're looking for, we realize that this is a little bit more expensive lending than typical because it is based on a contract. Contract is really the collateral and the business's ability to complete that contract. So it is a little bit different than, say, buying a dump truck, where there is a piece of collateral attached to it very readily that could be recaptured and resold. So an eligible contract shall be as a prime again or a subcontractor, can be a sub-subcontractor on a project or procurement that is contracted and executed in the state of New York that receives all or part of its financial backing from a New York State agency, municipality, county, town, village, public school district, or other legally recognized government entity. So I was thinking, I want to make that clear. If it was the Canal Corporation, that counts. If it's a county, a town, a village, all of those are all potential contracts. Those are all potential sources of customers for your CDFI. Anyone working on any of those types of loans or any of those types of projects. And again, to support working capital, improvement, machinery and equipment, or other related costs required to execute those contracts. So it is specifically attached to that particular contract. Should be in the form of line of credit to mitigate risk. And there are a few exclusions, things that the proceeds from these loans can't be used for. They shouldn't be used for refinancing, retiring, or liquidating existing debt. They can't be used for residential construction projects that aren't government sponsored. So it has to be a government-sponsored project for it to be used residentially. shouldn't be used for taxes in arrears, shouldn't be used for employee benefits in arrears, shouldn't be used for purchase or rehabilitation of a property for speculative purposes. Again, it shouldn't be, for buying something to flip, because that's not going to be appropriate for a government contract. And they shouldn't be loans to educational institutions. But that when I state that, that doesn't mean that it can't be used for a project at an educational institution. That means the institution itself can't be the borrower. So a school district can't borrow the money, but someone working for a school district could. And the one exception there is a child care facility. A child care facility can actually do a loan directly. Loans to hospitals and residential health care facilities are not allowed. But of course, if it was a government-funded project at a hospital, that would qualify. Again, it's a loan directly to the hospital or the residential care facility. Loans to nonprofit corporations, same thing applies. The businesses receiving the loan should be a for-profit business, but the work they could be doing can be for a nonprofit. And loans to overnight lodging facilities, again, the same requirements. So again, the borrower itself can't be a nonprofit or a lodging facility or a hospital or residential care facility. It doesn't necessarily mean the project can't be related to those things. So now for your loan loss coverage. Again, this is a loan loss reserve program. If the lender incurs a loss in a manner consistent with the commercially reasonable methods and their customary practice for defaults, you can file a claim with Empire State Development to recoup part of the value of the loan. And the claim can be for the amount of the charge-off plus 90 days of interest, and can also include certain fees. A claim should be filed within 180 days of actions of the lender to charge off all or part of the program loan. So how much gets covered? There are two different tiers of coverage. There's a standard tier and an enhanced tier. So the standard tier is 50%. New York State can cover 50% of the lender's loss if there is no contract assignment. So this would be a qualifying loan. No contract assignment has been put in place. There's no assignment of payments. The lender can still collect up to 50%. We can do up to 50% of the lender's loss. If the lender gets a contract assignment, which is an assignment of payments, so that the payments are going back to a funds controlled account, going back to the lender, so that the lender can make sure that they're receiving payments out of that money. Frequently with the Bridge to Success program, it was a requirement. It can be up to 80%. So you can do an 80% recapture via the loan loss coverage program with those particular loans. And I will say that in the past, people have had, or have been concerns about getting an assignment of payments from the prime contractor. We've got a couple things that are in process to try to smooth that out, but it is a very straightforward process. And I will say that the vast majority of the several hundred Bridge to Success loans that have been done over the last few years have utilized those contract assignments. And subsequent to the receipt of the payment of the claim, if the lender should recover any money after the claim has been paid by ESD, then we'll expect that the portion of ESD's repayment that matches that claim or that money recovered would go back into your loan loss reserve account. So for example, you have a $10,000 loan loss write-off and $1,000 gets recovered after we've issued your $10,000 write-off, then the portion of that $1,000 that was covered by your tier, whether it's a 50% or 80%, that we would expect that to be put back into your accounting, back into your loan loss reserve account for other future losses. And I will say that those losses are actually, those accounts are going to be held at the lenders themselves. It's not going to be something that's going to have to be paid back directly to ESD. It'll go back into your account. So for more information on loss claims, at no time can a lender claim a loss that would result in the sum of their total program losses to exceed 50% of the total value of their loans in the program portfolio. This is required by Ssbci. The lender must maintain a 1-to-1 ratio of losses versus loans at a minimum. So what that means is that you won't be able to have more than 50% of your loans actually go bad and get repaid. If you had $1 million portfolio since the program began, then the maximum amount that you could claim would be $500,000. Would be half of it. Based upon the percentages of loss, I don't think anyone's going to run into this problem. The only time I would see anybody running into that would probably be at the very beginning of the program. If, say, the first loan that they did went bad, I could see that becoming an issue. But I think that's going to be it's a requirement, but I don't think it's a requirement that you're going to encounter very often. The lender will be allowed to draw upon the reserve account once ESD is satisfied that the loan is a bona fide loss. So what's going to happen is that you'll go through your regular collection procedure. At the end of your collection procedure, if you don't, or if you're not going to have the ability to collect this loan, then you can file your claim with ESD. ESD is going to review the documents, the exhibits that go along with the loan that are going to be outlined in your loan agreement that are pertinent to that particular loan. We'll give you authorization to draw the money from your reserve account, and you can draw the money from your reserve account to cover the difference. The reserve account is going to be held by the lender, so it won't be a situation where money is going to be issued directly from ESD every time there's a loss. In general, those documents are going to be the claim form, a copy of your loan agreement, a copy of your contract assignment if it's an enhanced tier claim, the accounting of the actual write-off, and a brief narrative that shows what you did to collect the loan. And again, typically a claim should only be made once the other options have been exhausted. But it is a pretty straightforward process. So we just do need documentation that due diligence was done to try to collect the loan and what your process was that you followed. And the loan should also be reported as rolled on your program required reporting. You have the ability to self-enroll these loans. You'll be able to self-enroll it as long as you realize that it follows the parameters. You'll be able to add it to your reporting. You won't have to get it pre-approved to be put in the program in this particular case, in this particular program. Other requirements, our loan loss reserve monies are going to be released in tranches. They should be held in a separate program reserve account. We will be releasing them to the lenders as the losses occur. A lender that is not deploying loan funds set to meet pro rata milestones, or if a lender is not deploying loan funds to the satisfaction of ESD, we could require the repayment of unallocated loan loss reserve funds. If you join the program and you're not doing loans that are related loans, rather than have the money sit in your account for years at a time, months at a time, years at a time, and not be utilized, with you not doing lending, then potentially we could change the amount of money that you're being allocated or pull that money back. It's not so much about making sure you have losses, it's just making sure you're doing loans. So if you do $100 million in loans and never have a loss, that's wonderful, that's fine. That's not the problem. It's about when you don't do any loans for months or years at a time, that's the issue. There will be a minimum dollar goal of contractor loans that need to be met for the lender to continue receiving funding for loan losses in the program. It's actually going to be outlined in the agreement. It goes along with the loan. It's really going to depend upon how much you're being allocated for a reserve as to what that dollar value is going to be. And there is going to be a minimum amount of loss claims to release additional reserve funds. So what will happen is that once you've expended a certain amount of reserve funds, then the next tranche will be able to be released to you so that you can put into your account. And the initial program term is expected to be 7 years with an optional additional 3 years of program. So, and I do want to point out, like I have previously last week, ESD is going to be actively marketing this program. We are going to be putting it on our website, issuing flyers, and doing live representation at booths and webinars and access to capital panel discussions, a variety of different things that we do to help drive business to your organization. But we do ask, please, that you consider how you can market these programs yourself, because it is important to generate traffic, to generate, to help the businesses in New York State. We're going to need your assistance to get the word out that you offer these particular programs and that these things are available to your borrowers. So I want you to think about how you can market and promote the program for your own institution. So now I'm going to turn it over for questions. Do we have any questions?
Great.
About everything I covered?
The first question that we had, because there are different rules that apply to CDFI banks versus other lenders, is there anything in this program that precludes CDFI banks from participating?
No, I wouldn't say that there was. You do have to be, you do have to offer this type of lending.
Okay.
So you would have to offer, offer contract financing to small business contractors. Not every CDFI I know offers this type of product, and that's really going to be I'm sure there's going to be a limited number of CDFIs that will participate simply because they don't offer this type of product. This is not a loan. This is not an area where they have the familiarity to issue these types of loans, these contract-based loans.
Right. Down into the nuts and bolts of this, we had a question about how long would ESD expect a CDFI to pursue repayment before they deem it a loss? In some cases, it can take years. So do you have a framework for that, declaring something a loss?
I wouldn't say that there is an actual time, because it really depends upon what the individual organization's collection process is. A lot of times, like in the past, we've seen where they've extended the terms, maybe switched to interest-only payments for a while in order to try to work with the borrower to make sure that it gets cleared. It's not a situation where what we don't really want to see is that, oh, okay, this person's going to be 90 days in arrears tomorrow, so we're filing our paperwork tomorrow to claim the loan. That's what we really don't want to see. We want to see, some attempt to try to collect the money before we reach that point. And part of that is also because it becomes, it's not so much about, we don't want people to be, I would say, lazy about trying to collect the loans. It's more about making sure that you don't end up with a whole bunch of loans that you think, okay, this loan has gone bad, and then it ends up coming back to current. And now you've drawn the money out. Now you've got to put the money back in your reserve account. Why is this money coming back out? Why is it going back in? Generally, the rule of thumb is if you haven't written it off internally, you probably shouldn't be writing it off from us. So if you've finally written it off internally and you've decided that this loan is not going to be collectible, that's really the time to collect it from us.
Gotcha. I'm curious if we could get a show of hands on this. You and Matt, if you want to go ahead and start switching out to the next presentation for Wayman,
okay,
that'd be great. But if we could get a show of hands on our participants who on this call might have been a borrower on the Bridge to Success, or who might have participated in the Bridge to Success program. If anybody did that, and if they could see similarities or differences between this program and the contractor financing program, I think that would be enlightening. So perhaps nobody used the Bridge to Success program. I know that Matt had mentioned that there were, hundreds or thousands of. It looks like
there were hundreds of loans. There were a limited number of banks that were participating.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say, let me make sure this is going to share. What I will say is that the primary difference between the two programs is that the scale of it. This is a much larger scale program than the previous one. And the previous Bridge to Success program was only very specifically for New York State certified MWBEs.
Oh, okay.
So obviously this is a much broader group of small businesses than was previously allowed in the program. So you did have to be a certified MWBE previously to participate, and it had to be New York State certification. That's no longer a requirement. Of course, those businesses are still eligible,
Right.
But that's no longer a requirement.
Well, that's a significant difference.
Yeah, correct. So it's a significant, broader, inclusive targeted group. So as you may have seen on the SETI definition, it included pretty much, as you can imagine, if you locate in a rural area or you had a targeted group of immigrants who are contractor in New York City, you could qualify for access to the contractor financing. And I would say for the contractor financing CDFI interested parties, if you're interested in this program, please write us an email so we know you're interested in exploring this after this event. So both Matt and myself would then make sure that when we have rolling out the program and in terms of solicitation, we'll make sure that you are included in receiving that information. Or if we do solicit direct participation, you will be definitely targeted and invited to participate in the program. So please let us know after the event, after listening to this, and see how that may fit into your regular lending programs and offerings, that this will be helpful for all the contracts that may be coming down from all the infrastructure funding. that the federal government is committed in giving away as part of the resurgence after COVID. Also, I want to highlight. Yeah, I was going to also highlight that besides the contractor financing, there's another program that we are not covering with the coalition at this point, but you should know about it if you are thinking about contractor financing. There is also a surety bond program, which is another product in itself, a complex product to support the activity of the projects that are deployed throughout the state. For contractors who are required to give bonding, the state has a program also committed to the tune of $22 million that will participate with surety companies to underwrite bonding. So if you need a surety bond, please contact me. I'll be able to guide you through the process, and it'll be helpful for contractor in the contractor financing program to get bonded. So they can apply for and also bid on projects that are larger scale than they require the bonding. So with that, I am going to move on to the Capital Project Loan Fund, if that's okay, Colin.
Can I just ask you to hold on for just 1 second, Wayman?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So based on the hand raising on the contractor finance program, Aisha Benson from True Fund was a participating lender. So I guess if anyone has questions about, how the prior program, compares to the new program, we'll look to Aisha for being the voice of experience. So with that, I will introduce Wayman Chong, who will tell us about the Capital Project Loan Fund. And just so everyone knows, I will be sharing a recording of this presentation as well as the PowerPoint decks probably early next week. So if you missed something, if you didn't get a chance to write it down, if you need Wayman or Matt's contact information, I'll be providing them next week. So with that, Wayman, take it away.
Great, thank you. And I did see just pop up, Carver is saying also they were part of the Bridge to Success, and they will be happy, obviously, to share their experience if you have questions about that besides True Fund. All right, so we are moving on to the Ssbci Capital Project Loan Fund. This is a program that will be a participation from ESD with a CDFI or a lender that will be interested in supporting a capital project. So as the name of the program suggests, this specific program is to support capital projects and scaling up. So what is the Capital Project Loan Fund? It would aid projects that promote the economic health of New York State by facilitating and creation of retention of jobs and increase in business activity throughout the state. So the project financing will support the businesses that are authorized to be conducting business in the state for the following purposes. So we're targeting projects that are led by manufacturing companies, non-retail service firms, headquarters facilities of firms engaged generally in the retail industry, retail firms located in distressed areas, and other businesses that are developing for recreational, cultural, historical purposes and facility related to that that are likely to attract a significant number of visitors. So generally speaking, there are participating businesses that have been in existence for at least 3 years. So although we do emphasize manufacturing companies and non-retail service firms, we do support a small limited number of those retail businesses that are located in the distressed area. So if you have a project that you feel that you'd like to participate as a lender, however, the scale and the size are much larger than the traditional numbers that you're comfortable with in terms of lending, you could think about ESD and this Capital Project Loan Fund as a potential partner so that we can participate in it. So just keep that in mind. We'll also support your targeted industry for investments if there are some that are developing in your geographic area or specific targeted industries that the local communities are interested in exploring. Next slide, please. So what are some of the examples of the targeted activities within the Capital Project Loan Fund? So we have been supporting addressing food deserts throughout the state, and food deserts are those that are defined in areas where the residents access to affordable, healthy food options. Generally, we're talking about the fresh fruit and vegetables that are restricted or non-existent due to the absence of the supermarket or grocery store within the commuting traveling distances for their population or communities. So Capital Project Loan Fund will seek to identify and prioritize those food or supermarket deserts within the CDFI investment areas. So right now, within your communities, if you do see there's a need for it and there are interested parties who would like to develop those projects, please reach out to this program and we'll be happy to investigate and also partner with you to underwrite some of the transactions. We also are targeting clean energy. which is for sustainable environmental progress for our state. So the CPLF will support and unleash more private investments and scale deployment of clean energy within the state of New York. Those projects would increase the availability of capital for project deploying proven clean energy technology, for example, STEM power, wind power, even aqua, or even the environmental friendly type of technology that may be being explored to substitute some old traditional methods that may not be so friendly for the environment, that we are trying to support so that New York State can ensure that all New Yorkers have equal access to clean energy and healthy communities. So this is another big agenda for the current governor. So we'd like to invite you to also consider those projects within your neighborhood if you have something you are exploring already or have thought about exploring but don't have a partner to deploy it. We also are focusing on agricultural projects. So the CPLF would aim to alleviate the economic barriers faced by small businesses in the agricultural industry that are looking to grow and expand. Those may include value-added processors, food distributors, food aggregators, beverage producers, and food hub participants. So CPLF would offer affordable capital to small agribusinesses that are looking to complete those projects and expand their capabilities to generate economic growth and create new opportunities for employment. Lastly, our targeted activities in CPLF and under the funding of Ssbci, where we are getting bulk of funding, we are targeted particular study projects. And again, Matt has given you the definition on the slide. So please review and be very familiar what a study project is, because throughout all of our projects, including Capital Access Program, we'll be tracking those investments in those individuals' own businesses. And it's a very broad definition. So we'll welcome you to explore that and see what percentage of your pool of targeted borrowers are within the study businesses. Next slide, please. So for a typical capital project loan fund direct loan structure, how does it look like for a project? So when you come to us and ask us to support the project, the structure we're looking at typically will be like this. The direct loan we'll be investing in are going to be for growth and manufacture and other eligible businesses that I mentioned before in the prior slide within the state of New York. And the way we're looking at it is most loans that we can support will be up for 40% of the total project cost, which will be either for real estate project or machinery and equipment projects. And loans may be up to 60% if they are for steady targeted businesses or steady individuals that are deploying those projects within the CDFI investment areas. So the project sizes will be from 40 to 60% of total project cost, depending on where they're located and also whether they're steady-owned business projects. Also, combining all the financing that you may gather for the project, will basically be able to support up to 90% of financing of the project, including your lender financing, and we're expecting that the borrower will provide 10% of the equity. So in summary, the project structure would be 50% bank loan, 40% CPLF loan, or bank loan or CDFI loan or lender's loan, and then 10% borrower's equity. So we do want an investment from the actual proponent of the proposal, the borrower, to actually contribute 10%. A CPLF real estate loan is normally a second mortgage loan. So we will take a secondary position and we will subordinate to the first mortgage loan from the bank. And for machinery equipment loans, we will be a secure loan by first lien, co-equal, pari passu to the bank's lien on the machinery equipment being financed. Loans that are made or guaranteed for the purpose of financing the acquisition of a real estate property or renovation or construction of the facilities may be made for a term not exceeding 20 years. Loans made for guarantee or purpose of financing acquisition of machinery equipment may be for up to 7 years, or the useful life of the collateral, whichever is less. So 7 years, up to 7 years for machinery equipment, and up to 20 years for real estate. Next slide. So what is the application process for us to participate in for this participation loan? So New York State will utilize the state's regional economic development offices and entrepreneurship assistance centers, as well as the CDFI Coalition, to source and evaluate these applications for program assistance in conformance with the specific evaluation criteria for the different types of assistance being requested. It's going to either be classified as a real estate loan or machinery equipment, or for working capital loans. An applicant for the program will be required to apply on a form to be developed and designed to elicit information about the project and the applicant. The required application would include information about the applicant's history, ownership, product services being rendered, their customer base, the market and marketing strategy, information about the proposed project, and the total project cost. As well as we would like to know how much of the assistance are they requesting, the proposed uses of the program funds, what private capital sources would they be putting in to commit to at least the 10%, as well as what loan programs would you be accessing to partner with the state, and the numbers of jobs created, as well as anticipated economic development results. So we'll review all those and find information that will be relevant for us to be able to approve this requested loan, adhering to the program guidelines that we described before. The interest on the loans will be set by Empire State Development Board of Directors when they approve the application. However, typically the rates and the terms that are determined will be basically more competitive than what the market would provide. And they're basically determined based on what is necessary for the project to be feasible. And definitely, like I said, it will reflect the market condition at that point. And also we will also consider the borrower's ability to repay and also meeting the project requirements. There will be an interest rate that will be established at that time, and typically cannot be lower than 3%. There will be an application fee of $250 when you actually do submit the application, and we will also assess a commitment fee of 2% of the amount approved for the project. The monitoring of the loan will be facilitated by the Empire State Development Portfolio Management Department. So these projects, in general, we're trying to make it affordable and feasible, and will be a partner to the other co-lenders in the program. So these are for transactions that typically you probably wouldn't be able to do on your own, or feel like you would like to make sure you can share the risk of the project with another entity, such as the state's program in this capital access for the capital project loan fund. Next slide, please. So that's pretty much the summary of what the project is and why we are asking for your participation on it. We'd like to support these lovely projects that are unable to be fulfilled or be financed currently in the marketplace. And we do suggest you look into your communities and also your borrower base to see if there are projects coming up. And we'll be happy to hear from you and be able to partner on these projects. Now I'd like to welcome you with any questions you may have about this program.
Thank you. We did have a couple of questions. We have one actually that harkens back to the first program. What are the criteria for distressed areas? I can't remember whether that was this program or the prior one actually. But what criteria are you using to define a distressed area? Census tract or?
Well, distressed areas, we do define in this case with the CDFI coalition will be within the CDFI investment areas, and also census data that you may find that would be able to meet the definition of distress, which I think typically is under 80% of median income or some other rolling basis that is census related, and so the latest census tract. But I believe the easiest way would be the CDFI investment area, and there's a website I believe the federal government will be providing where you can just put in the address and see whether they are within those investment areas. Okay,
so we have a thought question. This reminds me of these questions on your math exams. You know, if a train leaves the station at X hour or whatever. So this is regarding this contractor financing program. And this is an example, okay, because Farshad had asked a question and I asked him to give an example. So a small minority roofing contractor is a subcontractor on building a housing project. The contractor is being paid by the general contractor, I guess, to do the roofing on an apartment building. The finance is going to the operating business, not the housing project. This is not considered housing finance in the New Markets Tax Credit Program, is Ssbci using the same logic as NMTC.
What would have to happen is that the housing project itself would have to be receiving government funding to be constructed. So if the primary project itself doesn't receive government funding, it wouldn't qualify. And when we see government funding, really it's not a tax credit funding so much as it's actual dollar funding. So it's actual money that could potentially, if a dollar could somehow flow out of the government's hands through the project, through the entity, and then to the subcontractor, that would qualify. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. So that would be the situation with something like that. It has to have actual government funding, especially with a residential project. For a residential project, it needs to have some sort of government money in it to qualify.
That's
unless
funny.
the project is a NYCHA project. I'm sorry, I was going to just add, unless that project is a NYCHA project, then it's actually funded by New York City, so that would be okay. So,
and one of the questions that just came up was when you're talking about government funding, is that housing trust fund through HCR? Are we talking about federal dollars? What constitutes government funding?
Really, it's money that's coming, like let's say money that's coming from the government towards the project. So let me use an example. Would be something like, let's say the ice arena that's being built, right, in Long Island. Now that arena is not necessarily owned by the government, but the government has contributing grant money towards the project to have it be completed. That's considered a government project. Well, I will also say that one of the things that usually happens when it comes to a state level project, it's going to probably have MWBE goals attached to it. So if there is an MWBE goal in a project, you can be certain that it's a government funded project. There'll be a quick way to discover if something definitely had government funding, because if it has those goals attached, it's got government funding. If it, not every organization is required to have those goals. A school district would not be required to have those goals. Counties and cities and villages, their own funding, their own procurement doesn't necessarily require those goals. But that would be a good way to judge it. Yes, that's the way I would look at it. Is it needs to actually be, there needs to be actual government dollars going into the funding for the project.
So here's
right. So
go ahead, Wayman.
I'm sorry. I was going to just add. So with that, I also want to say, for example, if there's like a Brooklyn project that YMCA is building an extra thing, and the mixture of their funding sources are city, state, and some other private foundation, as long as there are governmental dollar in it, like Matt was emphasizing, that project would qualify, even though it's owned by a nonprofit.
So,
exactly.
Again, you had mentioned something about maybe not tax credit funds. What about LIHTC? LIHTC deals usually have 75 to 80% of equity from federal tax credits. Would you include these projects, especially since a lot of minority contractors would be using the financing in this space? So does LIHTC count against the federal or the government dollars rule?
I would say that if it's federal funding and it's a project in the state of New York, right? So if it was getting federal money and it was a project in the state of New York, unless there is a qualification on the Ssbci funding that wouldn't allow it, and that we may have to research to make sure, I would say that it would be okay. There might be something deep in the rules of Ssbci that says that federal dollars can't be applied to federal dollars twice. I'm not certain of. That would probably have to do a little more research on to verify. But I would
go ahead.
Go ahead. But I would say that as long as it has, actual, dollars grant money going into it, then it will qualify. Tax credits, I don't. Tax credits, I would say no, because the tax credit's a little different. It's not the same. It's not really the same intent, and it's not. It's not really not a government project.
And there's something that someone else just brought up. It's a bit confusing because tax credit allocation comes from the government, but the money comes from private investors. So I'm presuming she's talking about syndicating. So if someone basically says, "Yeah, I'll buy that tax credit," how does that work? How does that wrinkle?
Yeah, that's not the intention of this program. That isn't the type of funding this program is going to qualify for. Those loans wouldn't qualify for this program. It needs to be look at it, think of it as an actual physical investment into the project itself, an actual, dollar investment into the project itself. The local brew pub got a grant of $50,000 from the regional council to build a tank. Okay, that's fine. To build a brew tank, that's fine. That would work. That would be okay because there's those dollars are in there. That would be fine. But things when it comes to tax credits and the new market tax credits and things like that, that's not the intention of this program. Those sort of things. Those aren't considered direct investments into the project. That's not government funded. Those aren't considered government funding in the definition of what we're talking about with this project.
Fair enough. So I think people are processing all of this. I'm not seeing a ton of additional questions. It is 12:50. So why don't we go ahead and thank Wei Min and Matt and Ray in absentia for pulling this together with us from Empire State Development. And what I'll be doing is saving this video, uploading it to our YouTube page. You can review it if there's anything that you wanted additional clarification on, or if there's something that you missed. I'll also be sharing the PowerPoints that Matt and Wei Min presented, along with their contact information, should you want some more in-depth discussion of these programs. Really want to thank our presenters today for taking the time to meet with us and share this important information. I want to thank all of you, our CDFI partners and members who are doing such important work in our communities across New York State. So with that, I'll say have a good weekend. Stay safe in the snow if you get it. And I'll hope to see a lot of CDFIs on our all hands call next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend. Bye.